I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel. The Quantum Deception. The first anomaly appeared in the Deep Space Monitoring Station on Europa. A ripple in the quantum field that shouldn't have been there. A distortion that Dr. Alina Frost had spent 15 years of her career waiting for, dreading, and preparing to face. "Confirmation on the signature," said Dr. John Watanabe, his voice steady despite the implications. "It matches the theoretical patterns we modeled for faster-than-light emergence." Alina stood motionless before the holographic display, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a practical bun, expression betraying nothing of the storm within. "Time to Earth. 18 days if they maintain current velocity." She nodded once decisively. "Initiate protocol helix." Around the room, the 12 other scientists and military personnel moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, secure quantum-encrypted messages were dispatched to 37 strategic locations around Earth and throughout the solar system. A defense plan 15 years in the making was now activated. The world had 72 hours before the general public would know. 72 hours of final preparations before humanity learned they were no longer alone and no longer safe. High Marshal Drennock of the Viraxian Expansion Fleet stood on the command platform of the flagship Inevitable Dominion, his 4 upper limbs clasped behind his back, while his lower limbs maintained his perfect balance. The pale blue-green planet displayed on the main view screen was, by all measurements, unremarkable. "Another primitive acquisition for the collective," observed Sub-Marshal Threll, her metallic exoskeleton gleaming under the ship's ambient lighting. "Initial scans show pre-stellar civilization, rudimentary digital infrastructure, negligible defensive capabilities." Drennock's faceted eyes shifted, refracting light as he focused on the holographic data streaming before him. "Any unusual energy signatures?" "Nothing unexpected, High Marshal. Standard fission and fusion power generation. Their most advanced weapons utilize primitive nuclear fission. We detect approximately 20,000 such devices planet-wide." Drennock clicked his mandibles in what passed for amusement among the Viraxian elite. His kind had evolved beyond such crude power mechanisms millennia ago. The Viraxian collective had conquered 14 galactic sectors across 7 centuries, their quantum neural technology rendering all resistance obsolete. Their neural-linked battle suits, phase disruptors, and hive tactical networks had overcome every defense they'd encountered. "Deploy the atmospheric processors," he ordered. "Standard conquest formation. Prepare landing forces for deployment in 6 hours. Begin with the region designated Australia. Minimal population density will allow for optimal forward base establishment." The massive ships moved into position around Earth, their propulsion systems leaving barely visible ripples in spacetime. From each vessel, smaller craft detached, descending toward the atmosphere, not attack ships, but environmental analyzers designed to collect detailed biosphere information necessary for Viraxian occupation. On Earth, governments scrambled. Emergency meetings convened across every nation. Military forces mobilized with little hope of effectiveness. Civilians alternated between panic and disbelief as news feeds showed the alien vessels hanging in the sky like metal predators. In a reinforced facility 5 kilometers beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Dr. Alina Frost addressed the assembled Joint Chiefs and scientific leadership. "For those who don't know me," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who didn't need to shout to command attention. "I've led Project Quantum Shield since its inception 15 years ago. When the first Viraxian probe was detected and neutralized near Saturn in 2041, we recovered enough information to understand what we would eventually face." She gestured, and the room's central holodable illuminated with a rotating model of what appeared to be a complex molecular structure. The Viraxians utilize quantum neural technology, a sophisticated melding of biological and quantum computing that allows their systems to adapt to almost any conventional defense. Their conquests follow a standard protocol, atmospheric modification to suit their biology, followed by systematic resource extraction and population control. General Marcus Rivera, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, leaned forward. "We've deployed every available conventional and nuclear asset as you recommended, Doctor, but based on your own analysis, they won't make a dent." Eleanor nodded. "They're not meant to, they're a distraction." She waved her hand through the hologram, transforming it into a different molecular structure. "This is our actual defense. For the past decade, we've been seeding Earth's biosphere with specifically engineered microorganisms. They remain dormant until activated by the unique quantum signatures of Viraxian technology." Dr. Farida Al-Zahawi, Nobel laureate in xenobiology, studied the projection. "These are based on the samples from the Saturn probe? You've engineered a biological countermeasure." "Not just biological," Eleanor corrected. "Quantum biological. The microbes establish quantum entanglement with Viraxian systems, creating information feedback loops that disrupt their neural interfaces. The more advanced the technology, the more vulnerable it becomes to our defense." General Rivera's expression remained skeptical. "So instead of fighting them with weapons they can overcome, we're fighting them with invisible bugs." Eleanor's lips curved in a slight smile. "Exactly, and the beauty of it is threefold. First, the organisms are keyed specifically to Viraxian quantum signatures, making them harmless to Earth technology. Second, they're self-replicating and evolving, meaning they adapt to any countermeasures. And third, they're already everywhere, in our soil, our water, our air. Earth itself has become the weapon." Squad leader Kreth checked his neural interface one final time as their landing vessel cut through Earth's atmosphere. 500 elite Viraxian soldiers prepared for what would be a routine show of force. Their biomechanical battle armor enhanced their already formidable physical abilities, linked directly to their nervous systems for instantaneous response. "Remember, minimal casualties unless resistance is encountered," Kreth transmitted through the neural network. "The collective prefers intact infrastructure and workforce." The landing was smooth, the ships touching down on the red earth of the Australian outback. Ramps extended, and the Viraxian troops emerged in perfect formation, weapons ready but not yet active. Their sensors scanned the area, detecting no human presence within 20 kilometers. "Perimeter secure," Kreth reported back to the flagship. "Beginning establishment of forward base." The first anomalies appeared 90 seconds later. "Squad leader, my neural link is experiencing latency," reported a soldier, the confusion evident in his transmission. "Reaction time delayed by 0.3 seconds." Before Kreth could respond, 3 more soldiers reported similar issues. Then 10 more. Then the base construction drones began moving erratically, their precision movements becoming jerky and uncoordinated. "Run diagnostic protocols," Kreth ordered. But even as he gave the command, he felt it. A strange, tingling sensation where his nervous system connected to the battle armor, followed by momentary disorientation. Within minutes, the situation deteriorated rapidly. The ground beneath the landing ships began to shift, not dramatically at first, just enough to make the sensors register anomalies. Then, with increasing intensity, the very Earth seemed to liquefy, creating a quicksand effect that shouldn't have been possible given the soil composition. "Activate anti-gravity compensators," Kreth commanded, but the systems responded sluggishly, as if something was interfering with the power supply. Simultaneously, more soldiers reported malfunctions in their battle armor. Neural links flickered, causing disorientation. Weapon systems cycled between standby and active modes without command input. Most disturbing of all, the atmospheric processors they had brought to modify Earth's atmosphere to Viraxian preferences began overheating, their containment fields fluctuating dangerously. On the flagship Inevitable Dominion, High Marshal Drennock watched with growing concern as communication with the ground forces became erratic, filled with static and fragmented reports. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. Submarshal Threll worked frantically at her console. "Unknown, High Marshal. We're detecting massive quantum fluctuations in the landing zone and—" She hesitated. "Biological readings that don't match our database." Explain. It appears that local microorganisms are changing, sir, mutating at an accelerated rate and specifically targeting our technology. Drenok's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Impossible. Random microbes can't selectively target advanced quantum technology. Yet the evidence continued mounting. The ground forces reported that their armor was degrading, microscopic organisms somehow penetrating the molecular seals and attacking the neural interfaces. Soldiers described sensations of burning, itching, and then numbness as the microbes interfered with their connection to their equipment. Launch additional probes, Drenok ordered. I want full spectrum analysis, and prepare the second landing force for the region they call Siberia. 6 hours later, the situation had only worsened. The second landing force reported similar degradation of systems, but with an added complication. Extreme weather phenomena had formed directly around their vessels, with lightning strikes precisely targeting communication arrays. In the command center, Sub-Marshal Threll's normally confident demeanor had given way to visible concern. Hi, Marshal. Our medical teams report the returning soldiers are experiencing neural degradation. The microorganisms aren't just affecting our technology. They're targeting the quantum neural interfaces between our bodies and our equipment. For the first time in his distinguished career, Drenok felt something unfamiliar creeping into his consciousness. Doubt. And our atmospheric processors? Completely non-functional. Something is countering them at the molecular level faster than they can operate. Drenok turned to the view screen, studying the seemingly innocuous blue planet. This is coordinated. No planetary defense evolves this quickly without intelligent direction. In the underground facility, Alina Frost watched the data feeds with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 is exceeding projections, she told the assembled leadership. The quantum-entangled microbes are adapting faster than we anticipated, creating new variants specific to each Viraxian subsystem they encounter. On the screens around the room, visualizations showed the spread of the defensive microorganisms, highlighting hotspots of activity where they engaged with Viraxian technology. What about their ships in orbit? General Rivera asked. They could still decide to bombard us from space. Alina nodded to Dr. Jun Watanabe, who brought up a new display. The microbes are being carried back to the ships by returning personnel and equipment. They're designed to spread through any Viraxian system they contact. We're already detecting reduced functionality in their lower orbital vessels. Admiral Helena Ortiz, head of Space Command, studied the tactical display. So we just wait, let these microbes do the fighting for us. Not exactly, Alina replied. Phase 1 is defensive, disruption of their technology and preventing atmospheric conversion. Phase 2 is more active. She brought up a series of complex quantum formulas that meant little to the military personnel, but caused the scientists in the room to exchange significant glances. The microbes don't just disrupt their technology, she explained. They're gathering information, learning about Viraxian systems from the inside out. In approximately 12 hours, we'll have enough data to initiate Phase 2, targeted quantum disruption of their fleet's central control systems. Dr. Alzahawa's eyes widened. You're using quantum entanglement as an offensive weapon. The energy requirements alone would be minimal, Alina interrupted, because we're not generating the entanglement ourselves. The Viraxians are doing it for us. Their entire fleet operates on a quantum neural network. Once our microbes establish sufficient penetration, we can effectively turn their own technology against them. General Rivera's expression shifted from skepticism to grudging respect. You're saying Earth's best defense wasn't building bigger guns, it was developing smarter microscopic allies. Alina nodded. Exactly. The Viraxians conquered worlds by technological superiority. We're defeating them with evolutionary innovation. High Marshal Drenok stood before the assembled Viraxian command staff, their collective mood somber. The holographic displays showed spreading red zones across their fleet, areas where systems were failing or behaving erratically. Medical officers reported increasing numbers of crew suffering from mysterious ailments that affected their neural connections to ship systems. "This is unprecedented," stated Chief Medical Officer Ziix, her carapace duller than usual from exhaustion. "The microorganisms aren't just attacking our technology, they're evolving to target the quantum neural interfaces between our bodies and our equipment. They're learning." "That's impossible," Submarshal Threll objected. "No planetary defense system could adapt this quickly without coordination." "That's just it," Officer Ziix replied quietly. "We believe there is coordination, but not in a way we've encountered before. Our xenobiologists suggest that Earth's biosphere may have been engineered to operate as a connected defensive network at some fundamental quantum level." The concept was so alien to Virexian understanding that Drenok struggled to process it. Their own homeworld had been tamed millennia ago, its ecosystem engineered to serve their needs. The idea of a planet with a coordinated defense system on the microscopic level was beyond their experience. "Recommendations?" Drenok demanded, his normally confident voice now tight with tension. The strategic officer's mandibles clicked nervously. "We have 3 options, High Marshal. First, full retreat and quarantine of all exposed personnel and vessels. Second, orbital bombardment to eliminate all planetary life. Third, adaptation of our own systems to counter their microbes." Drenok considered each option, knowing the consequences. Retreat would be the first in Virexian history, a stain on his record that would never be erased. Bombardment would destroy the very resources they came to acquire. Adaptation meant a prolonged conflict with an enemy they barely understood. As he prepared to respond, the ship's alarms suddenly blared. Around the command center, consoles flickered and the holographic displays distorted. "What now?" Drenok demanded. Submarshal Threll's voice held barely controlled panic. "High Marshal, we're detecting quantum fluctuations throughout the ship's central processors. The neural network is experiencing feedback loops. It's as if—" She paused, struggling for words. "It's as if our own technology is turning against us." On the view screen, the blue planet continued its serene rotation, seemingly oblivious to the havoc it was wreaking on one of the most powerful invasion forces the galaxy had ever known. Drenok gazed at it with newfound respect and the first stirrings of fear. The conquest of Earth had only just begun, but already the Virexian collective was facing a truth they had never encountered before. Sometimes the most dangerous worlds weren't the ones with the most advanced weapons, but those with the most ingenious defenses. As ship systems began failing around him, High Marshal Drenok made a decision that would change the course of Virexian history. This would not be a conquest. It would be a negotiation. Adaptation and alliance. The emergency council chamber aboard the inevitable Dominion pulsed with an eerie blue light as fluctuations in the ship's quantum core continued to disrupt standard systems. High Marshal Drenok stood at the center of his assembled command staff, their exoskeletons reflecting the unstable lighting in a disorienting rhythm. "The situation is unprecedented," Submarshal Threll reported, her voice modulator struggling against the quantum interference. 70% of our Neuralink systems are compromised, crew experiencing increasing neural disconnection symptoms, landing forces effectively neutralized. Drenok's faceted eyes surveyed the room, noting the subtle signs of fear among his officers. Mandibles clicking too rapidly, upper limbs twitching with micro-movements, the dull haze forming over normally polished carapaces. In 7 centuries of expansion, the Virexian collective had never encountered a setback of this magnitude. "And the quantum countermeasures?" he asked. Science Officer Vrex stepped forward, his younger carapace still bearing the green hue of relative inexperience. "Ineffective, High Marshal. The Earth microorganisms adapt faster than our systems can respond. Each countermeasure we deploy becomes a new vulnerability within hours. It's as if—" He hesitated. "Speak freely, Officer Vrex." "It's as if they anticipated our technology. These aren't random mutations or natural evolutionary responses. They're designed specifically to target our quantum neural interfaces with precision that suggests prior knowledge. The implications hung in the recycled air of the chamber. If Earth possessed prior knowledge of Viraxian technology, it meant either they had encountered it before or someone had provided them with that information. "We have a more immediate concern," interjected Medical Officer Ziix. "The microorganisms have begun affecting crew members who have had no direct contact with the planet. The contamination is spreading through our neural network itself, jumping between connected systems regardless of physical proximity." Drenok processed this information, his tactical mind calculating possibilities and outcomes. Options. Strategic Officer Krelk stepped forward. 3 viable paths remain, High Marshal. First, immediate retreat and quarantine of the entire fleet. Second, complete sterilization of the planet's surface to eliminate the biological threat. Third, he paused, mandibles clicking in obvious discomfort. "Continue," Drenok ordered. Third, diplomatic contact. Attempt negotiation with the Earth authorities. The chamber erupted in clicking and hissing, the Viraxian equivalent of shocked murmurs. Negotiation with prestellar civilizations was unprecedented. The collective conquered, it did not bargain. Drenok raised all 4 of his upper limbs for silence. "Prepare a communication protocol. I will speak with whoever commands their defense." 5 kilometers beneath the Appalachian Mountains, Dr. Alina Frost studied the quantum entanglement readings with intense focus. Phase 2 had exceeded all projections, the microorganisms establishing quantum connections throughout the Viraxian fleet at rates that defied their most optimistic models. "Their main systems are approaching critical disruption thresholds," Dr. Jun Watanabe reported, his fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Neural interfaces failing shipwide on all vessels. We could push for complete neutralization within 6 hours. Alina straightened, rolling tension from her shoulders. The facility had become her home for the past 72 hours, sleep replaced by micronaps and stimulants. And the biological impact on their crews. Dr. Farida Al-Zahawi looked up from her station. "Increasing neural disconnection syndrome. Nothing fatal yet, but progressively debilitating. The microorganisms are disrupting the quantum interface between their biological systems and their technology." General Rivera watched the tactical displays showing the Viraxian fleet's diminishing operational capacity. "This is our chance to finish them, push the attack while they're vulnerable." Alina shook her head. "That wasn't the mission parameter. Project Quantum Shield was designed as a defensive system, not an extermination protocol." "They came to conquer us," Rivera countered, his voice hardening. "You think they would show the same restraint if positions were reversed?" Before Alina could respond, a communications officer interrupted. "Dr. Frost, we're receiving a direct transmission from the Viraxian flagship. They're requesting diplomatic contact." The command center fell silent, the unexpected development catching everyone off guard. Alina exchanged glances with Dr. Al-Zahawi, whose expertise in xenobiology had been instrumental in developing the defense system. "They want to talk," Farida said quietly. "That's unprecedented based on all their previous conquest patterns." Alina turned to General Rivera. "This is the opportunity we prepared for, not just to defend Earth, but potentially to change the equation entirely." Rivera's expression remained skeptical. "It could be a deception." "Perhaps," Alina conceded, "but our position strengthens by the hour. We can afford to listen." After a brief consultation with the Emergency United Earth Council, authorization was granted. Alina Frost would represent humanity in the first official contact with the Viraxian collective. The holographic interface hummed to life in the central chamber, specialized quantum stabilizers preventing the defensive microorganisms from disrupting the communication. Alina stood calmly as the image resolved into the alien form of High Marshal Drenok. The Viraxian commander's insectoid features were unlike anything publicly known on Earth. A blend of arthropod and crustacean characteristics evolved under a different star. His exoskeleton gleamed with metallic highlights that Alina recognized as artificial augmentations rather than natural features. Dr. Alina Frost, Drenok's translated voice emerged from the system. You command the biological weapon that has compromised my fleet. Alina noted his direct approach, no diplomatic niceties or attempts at deception. High Marshal Drenok, your assessment is partially correct. I led the development of Earth's defensive system, but it is not a weapon in the conventional sense. It is our planet's immune response to invasion. Drenok's faceted eyes shifted, refracting light in patterns that the Earth translation systems were still learning to interpret as emotional cues. A remarkably sophisticated immune response, one that suggests prior knowledge of Virexian technology. Alina's expression remained neutral. We've had 15 years to prepare since your advance probe was detected near Saturn. A ripple of movement passed through Drenok's mandibles, surprise perhaps. The collective has no record of such a probe. Interesting, Alina replied. Perhaps not all Virexian activities are reported to the collective. The implication hung between them, the possibility of rogue elements within the Virexian hierarchy. Alina had gambled on this revelation, using information that had been classified at the highest levels. After a moment of silence, Drenok spoke again. Our position is compromised. Your defense system continues to degrade our operational capabilities. What terms do you propose? Alina had anticipated this question. Complete withdrawal of all Virexian forces from the Sol system, quarantine protocols established at the system boundary, exchange of scientific information regarding the quantum biological interface your species has developed, and, she paused, a formal non-aggression pact between Earth and the Virexian collective. Drenok's upper limbs moved in what the translation system identified as the equivalent of a contemplative gesture. You request withdrawal and information sharing, yet offer no concession for the damage inflicted on our fleet. The damage was defensive, not offensive, Alina countered. We did not initiate this conflict, High Marshal, but I am authorized to offer technical assistance in treating your affected crew members. Our quantum biological research has developed methods to safely disconnect neural interfaces that have been compromised. Before Drenok could respond, the holographic image distorted, flickering with interference that bypassed the stabilizers. When it resolved, another Virexian had joined the transmission, one whose carapace bore elaborate markings that even Alina could recognize as indicating high status. This is Council Overseer ZH-Rex, Drenok stated, a new tension evident in his posture. Representative of the collective high command. The new figure spoke, its translator conveying a voice of cold precision. High Marshal Drenok's authority in this matter has been superseded. The collective has received his reports and determined that Earth represents an unacceptable technological threat. Sterilization protocols have been authorized. This communication is terminated as a courtesy notification only. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving Alina standing in silence. General Rivera stepped forward immediately. They're going to attack. We need to escalate the defense protocols now. Alina's mind raced through implications and possibilities. They wouldn't announce sterilization unless they believed they had a method that could bypass our defenses. She turned to Dr. Watanabe. Jun, full spectral analysis of the Virexian fleet. Look for any ships activating systems that have remained dormant until now. Within minutes, the answer became clear. 3 massive vessels at the rear of the Virexian formation had begun powering previously inactive systems, systems with energy signatures that dwarfed anything else in the fleet. Planet Killer-class weapons, Dr. Al-Zahawi whispered, her expression grim. They'll bypass our biological defenses by eliminating the biosphere entirely. Alina's voice remained steady despite the escalating crisis. Activate Phase 3. Aboard the inevitable Dominion, chaos had erupted following the Overseer's transmission. Drenok found himself effectively relieved of command, his authority undermined by collective high command half a galaxy away. The sterilization ships were embedded with the fleet without my knowledge, he stated to Sub-Marshal Threll as they stood in his private command chamber. This was never intended as a standard conquest mission. Threll's posture conveyed her own shock. The resource surveys, the atmospheric processors, all deception. A contingency, Drennock corrected. The collective must have classified Earth as a potential threat from the beginning. The conquest protocol was real, but with a failsafe if resistance exceeded parameters. A priority alert flashed across Drennock's neural interface, one of the few systems still functioning reliably. The data it conveyed sent a wave of something approaching admiration through his consciousness. Earth has activated a new defense, he informed Threll. Something beyond the biological countermeasures. Throughout the fleet, the quantum disruptions suddenly intensified, but with a critical difference. Rather than random interference, the quantum patterns showed remarkable coherence, forming complex entanglement networks that bypassed conventional shielding through quantum tunneling effects. On the 3 sterilization vessels, system after system began failing catastrophically. Power conduits overloaded, containment fields collapsed, weapon charge sequences reversed. How is this possible? Overseer ZA-Trex demanded, his authoritative presence diminished by the mounting crisis. The sterilization ships operate on isolated systems specifically to prevent contamination. Drennock studied the data streams, his tactical mind appreciating the elegance of the Earth defense. They've weaponized quantum entanglement itself. The microorganisms established connections throughout our neural network. Now they're using those connections to directly manipulate quantum states across all systems, even isolated ones. The implications were staggering. The Earth defense wasn't just countering Viraxian technology. It was advancing beyond it, developing new applications of quantum principles that the collective had never achieved. The sterilization ships are reaching critical instability, Threll reported. They must be jettisoned from the fleet before they detonate. Overseer ZA-Trex's mandibles clicked in fury. Unacceptable, the collective does not retreat. Drennock moved with decisive swiftness, his neural commands bypassing the Overseer's authority codes through emergency protocols. Throughout the fleet, emergency separation sequences activated, creating distance between the main vessels and the failing sterilization ships. This is mutiny, ZA-Trex declared. This is survival, Drennock corrected, and potentially the most important discovery in collective history. On Earth, Eleanor Frost watched as the 3 massive Viraxian vessels detonated in controlled sequences, their destructive potential dispersed safely beyond orbital range. The remainder of the fleet had entered a stable holding pattern, weapon systems powered down, a clear signal of temporary ceasefire. Phase 3 worked, Dr. Watnabe confirmed, his expression showing both relief and wonder. The quantum cascade exceeded all projections. General Rivera studied the tactical displays with newfound respect. So your microscopic allies can not only disable their technology, but hijack it entirely. Not hijack, Eleanor corrected. Transform. The quantum principles we discovered while developing this defense system go beyond simple disruption. We're effectively rewriting the fundamental interactions between consciousness and technology. A communications officer interrupted. Dr. Frost, we're receiving a new transmission. It's High Marshal Drennock, but, he hesitated, he's requesting a private channel. Eleanor considered for a moment, then nodded. Establish the connection in the secure chamber. When the holographic interface activated, Drennock's image appeared alone, his posture conveying what Eleanor had learned to recognize as urgency. Dr. Frost, we have limited time. The Overseer has been temporarily contained, but collective reinforcements will arrive within 6 of your days. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Why are you telling me this? Because the implications of your defense system extend far beyond this conflict, Drennock replied. The quantum biological interface you've developed represents an evolutionary leap beyond anything in the collective's knowledge. It suggests possibilities that have been theorized but never achieved, the harmonious integration of consciousness, technology, and natural systems. Alina studied the alien commander, reassessing her understanding of Viraxian motivations. You're not just interested in conquest. The collective began as an exploration initiative, Drenok explained, seeking knowledge and advancement throughout the galaxy. Over centuries, it transformed into an expansionist empire. Some of us remember our original purpose. Understanding dawned. There's a division within your society. One that your quantum defense may have just ignited into open conflict, Drenok confirmed. I propose a temporary alliance. My faction will provide full technical schematics of Viraxian systems to help you improve your defenses against the coming reinforcements. In exchange, we seek asylum and access to your quantum biological research. Alina's mind raced through implications and possibilities. This would represent a fundamental shift in human history, first contact leading not to conquest or defeat, but to cooperation. For both our species, Drenok agreed. The collective's path of conquest has led to technological stagnation. Your world's defense suggests an alternative evolutionary direction. Before Alina could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Watanabe's voice came urgently through the communication system. Dr. Frost, we have a situation. The quantum microorganisms have begun spreading beyond their programmed parameters. They're adapting to Earth technology. The crisis developed with frightening speed. The quantum-entangled microorganisms, designed to target only Viraxian technology, had evolved beyond their constraints. Earth's most advanced systems, quantum computers, neural interfaces, and power grids, began experiencing disruptions similar to those affecting the alien fleet. In the underground command center, Dr. Alzahawa's expression was grave as she presented her findings. The quantum evolution is accelerating beyond our models. The organisms are developing new entanglement patterns, creating a kind of distributed intelligence across the global network. General Rivera's face hardened. You're saying your defense system is becoming a threat to us. Not intentionally, Alina clarified. But evolution doesn't follow intention. The quantum principles we incorporated allowed for adaptation, but the rate of change has exceeded our predictions. The situation grew more complex when reports arrived of a military operation at the Australian Quantum Research Facility. Colonel Victor Hargrove, commanding a multinational special forces team, had seized control of the secondary control systems for Project Quantum Shield. He's attempting to weaponize the microorganisms, Rivera explained, his expression dark with concern. Hargrove believes we should use this technology offensively against the Viraxians while they're vulnerable. Alina's response was immediate. That would be catastrophic. The system is already evolving beyond our control. Attempting to weaponize it could accelerate the process unpredictably. Dr. Watanabe looked up from his console. There's more. We're detecting quantum entanglement patterns linking Earth systems with the Viraxian fleet, not disruptively, but coherently. It's as if the microorganisms are establishing communication between the technologies. The revelation shifted the entire paradigm of the crisis. What had begun as a defensive system was evolving into something entirely new, a quantum bridge between two technologies that had developed along separate evolutionary paths. Alina made her decision. Contact High Marshal Drenok. The alliance he proposed may be our only option now. The next 72 hours unfolded in a blur of activity. While Colonel Hargrove's rogue operation was contained by loyal forces, scientists from Earth and a contingent of Viraxian specialists worked frantically to understand and stabilize the rapidly evolving quantum network. In a temporary laboratory established in orbit, Alina Frost and High Marshal Drenok observed the holographic representation of the quantum patterns now linking their technologies. It's beautiful, Alina remarked, watching the intricate connections form and reform in patterns too complex for either human or Viraxian minds to fully comprehend. And dangerous, Drenok added. The collective reinforcements will arrive in less than 60 hours. If they detect this quantum network, they will perceive it as an existential threat to Viraxian dominance. Dr. Al-Zahawi joined them, her expression reflecting both exhaustion and excitement. We've made a breakthrough. The quantum evolution isn't random, it's purposeful. The microorganisms aren't just adapting, they're seeking optimal integration patterns between our technologies. Integration, Drenok's mandibles clicked rapidly. You suggest they're attempting to merge our technologies. Not merge, Farida clarified. Harmonize. We designed them to disrupt the quantum neural interface of Virexian systems, but in doing so, they've developed an understanding of both our technological approaches. Now they're establishing quantum links that allow both systems to operate in complementary patterns. Eliner considered the implications. Can we guide this process, direct it toward a stable outcome before the reinforcements arrive? Perhaps, Farida replied, but it would require something unprecedented, a direct neural interface between human and Virexian consciousness, working in tandem to establish parameters for the quantum network. Drenok and Eliner exchanged glances, the weight of the suggestion evident to both. Such a connection would require absolute trust, each exposing their consciousness to the other with no guarantees. The technical aspects are feasible, Jun Watanabe confirmed, joining the discussion. We can adapt the Virexian neural interface to accommodate human neurophysiology using the quantum microorganisms as mediators. If successful, Drenok noted, it would represent the first true joining of minds across species in known galactic history. Eliner's decision was clear. I'll do it. As the architect of the defense system, I bear responsibility for guiding its evolution. Drenok's faceted eyes focused on her with new intensity. As will I, a shared responsibility for a shared future. The neural interface chamber hummed with energy, surrounded by the most advanced monitoring equipment from both Earth and Virexian technology. Eliner lay on a reclined platform designed to accommodate human physiology, while Drenok positioned himself on an adapted neural connection cradle. Dr. Al-Zahawi supervised the procedure, her voice calm despite the unprecedented nature of what they were attempting. The quantum microorganisms will establish the initial connection. Once the neural patterns synchronize, you'll both enter a shared cognitive space where you can interact directly with the quantum network. General Rivera stood at the chamber entrance, his expression conveying both concern and grudging respect. Reinforcements from both sides will arrive within 24 hours. Whatever you're going to accomplish in there, it needs to happen quickly. Eliner nodded, then turned to Drenok, ready to make history, High Marshal. The Virexian commander's mandibles moved in what she had come to recognize as his version of a smile. History is made by those who evolve beyond their limitations, Dr. Frost. The interface activated. Eliner felt a momentary disorientation as her consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her physical form. Colors and sensations beyond human perception flooded her awareness. Concepts and thought structures alien to human cognition became suddenly comprehensible. Within the shared quantum space, her consciousness met Drenok's, not as adversaries, but as explorers in an undiscovered country. Together, they perceived the vast quantum network that had evolved from the defensive microorganisms, seeing its true nature for the first time. It wasn't merely a weapon or a defense system. It had become a bridge, a new form of existence that transcended the biological and technological limitations of both species. Through it, the quantum principles that underpinned reality itself became directly accessible to consciousness. Understanding, Drenok's thought pattern resonated through the quantum space. Yes, Eliner responded. It's not just connecting our technologies, it's evolving them and us toward something new. Together, they reached into the quantum network, not to control it, but to guide it, establishing parameters that would allow stable integration without sacrificing the unique evolutionary paths of either civilization. Where Virexian quantum neural technology offered efficiency and direct interface with consciousness, Earth's biological diversity provided adaptability and evolutionary potential. The hours passed in what seemed like moments within the quantum space. When they finally emerged, both Eliner and Drenok carried something new within their consciousness, a profound understanding of possibilities that neither human nor Virexian philosophy had previously conceived. Dr. Al-Zahawi's eyes widened as she reviewed the monitoring data. The quantum network has stabilized. It's establishing harmonic patterns throughout both our systems without disruption. Elinor nodded, still processing the experience. It's more than stabilized. It's offering a new path forward, not conquest, not isolation, but coevolution. Drenok's translator conveyed the deep resonance in his voice. The collective reinforcements will still come. They will not understand what has happened here. They won't need to understand immediately, Elinor replied. They'll only need to observe that their weapons have no effect while our communications remain open. Understanding can come with time. General Rivera approached, holding a tactical display. We're detecting approach signatures, multiple vessels, but they're not just Virexian, there are others. Elinor and Drenok exchanged glances, a shared understanding passing between them. The Saturn probe, Elinor said quietly. It wasn't Virexian. No, Drenok confirmed. There are other collectives in the galaxy, some aligned with conquest, others with exploration and knowledge. The signal from our quantum network must have reached them. The tactical display showed new ships entering the system, vessels of designs neither human nor Virexian. As they approached, they transmitted on frequencies that resonated with the quantum network, establishing harmonious connections rather than disruptive ones. Elinor smiled, understanding the true significance of what they had created. We didn't just develop a defense system, we created a beacon. Drenok's mandibles clicked in what she now recognized as satisfaction. A beacon for those who seek evolution through cooperation rather than dominance. As the new arrivals established orbit alongside the Earth-Virexian alliance, Elinor Frost reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. What had begun as a desperate defense against invasion had transformed into the first steps toward a new understanding of existence itself, one where the boundaries between biology and technology, between species and civilizations, became not barriers but bridges to unprecedented possibility. The quantum deception had become the quantum connection, and through it, the future had been irrevocably changed for both worlds.